really none of your business. It's none of my business.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Motivated Classroom Instagram Reels. This is the August spotlight on interviews from the podcast, and today is day 4. I'm deliberately not saying anything in French, Spanish and Irish at the beginning because for some reason it's not allowing me to do captions because it can't understand the accent or the voice I'm using. Now I don't know if that's Instagram telling me my Irish accent doesn't work or if it's just saying that I'm using different languages, so I'm going to try just speaking English right now and see if it works. So today's episode 4, or it's the 4th part of this August spotlight, and the episode I want to focus on is episode 99 with the wonderful Dr. Kim Noels, the University of Alberta in Canada, and just how wonderful that episode was to really talk about self-determination theory and language learning in particular. Now remember that Dr. Noels is a really big name in the field of self-determination theory and language acquisition studies related to motivation. Her motivational questionnaire that she developed around the year 2000 in a study that was about why am I learning French with students has become a tool that has been used with many researchers looking into self-determination theory, motivation in the language learning classroom. So she was really one of the first researchers to specifically look at the motivational needs for intrinsic motivation with language learning. And I actually used a version of her survey along with Quint Oga-Baldwin's and combined them and changed it a little bit for my own study. But she's really a big deal. So it was wonderful to talk to her. And just a few of the things that she said that really stuck with me. So one of the first things she said at the beginning of the interview was, she was just saying that one of the things we need to concentrate on as teachers is that it's about balance. It's a balance between letting people do the things that they're inherently interested in or finding ways to develop interest in new things, as well as having to deal with the constraints that we have coming from our education systems and exams. And I've spoken about that many times, that we all work within certain constraints and contexts. Some of us have big, scary exams. Some of us have big, scary parents. Some of us have big, scary administrators and principals who wants things done in a certain way. But what happens inside your classroom and the strategies you use, we can choose to focus on doing things around comprehensible input, interesting inputs that raise autonomy, competence, and relatedness, and therefore motivation. Or we can choose not to do that and just do exactly, loads of extrinsic, learning things off by heart, memorization, keeping them quiet. But you're only getting those gains in the short term because you're not really instilling a love for it or a passion for it and enjoyment that wants them to come back to it. And the second thing she mentioned that I really liked was she talked about what Edward Deci and Richard Ryan's contribution in particular to the field of motivation was that we're pursuing something that is meaningful to us. The kind of competence like our mastery and relatedness or connections was always there in motivation. But this idea of doing something that was personally meaningful to you at the core to psychological health. And she says that in the interview, anything in an educational context that undermines the realization of those needs, autonomy, competence, and relatedness, can lead to dysfunctional behavior and dysfunctional well-being. And again, that was mirrored by what Quint Oga-Baldwin said, what Richard Ryan said, and many others. In terms of the language learning classroom, I thought this was really poignant. She said, I think we have a lot of people, who come to the language classroom absolutely love learning the language. And I think it is, as teachers, we need to keep that motivation up. But there's a lot of people who come in not finding it inherently interesting or fun to do. And that's probably the bigger portion. They're kind of neutral or they're there for other reasons. And what we need to do is enhance their interests. And we do that to start by developing their interests that they see as personally meaningful to them. And that starts by planning lessons around autonomy, competence, and relatedness. I thought that was really good, particularly for those of us working in a second level context with students who are told by their parents that they have to do it or they're doing it simply for the exam. But we have the power to change what goes on in that classroom and make it interesting for them by focusing on those needs. And at the end, she said a couple of things that really stuck with me. One was that she was talking about tips for teachers, and she was saying, motivation is not, she said, the teacher doesn't give students motivation. We help them develop their own skills and we help them to realize those psychological needs of motivation. So we can plan lessons that try to raise competence by having very clear criteria, good feedback, and making them feel confident by speaking in little pairs rather than groups or on their own. We can raise autonomy and meaningfulness and value and ownership of the learning by things like co-creation, invisible characters, little stories that we do together, and relatedness, them working together, working in little pairs, making their own little story, their own characters. All of that raises that feeling. We can choose to do those things. We don't motivate them, we just enhance those skills and meet those psychological needs. So that was the fourth episode for this August Spotlight. Today's one was Kimberly Noels and the wonderful episode 99. So please go back and listen to that one. It focuses particularly on language learning and motivation. See you tomorrow.